Welcome to this episode of ISV Talks Videos. And I'm Carol Livingston, the owner of Dynamics Connections and the host of ISV Talks. And on this episode, I have my friend Jesse from Fraxion. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. Hey, Jesse, so could you introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been in the industry with the company?
You bet. It's always good to do this because I've been in here so long. It reminds me how long I've been in the channel. I actually started way back in the Microsoft channel in about 2000. So it's what I'm on
Oh,
year 24 of that. I've been with this company with Fraxion for about 4 years now. So industry wise, we've been on that 25 years. I started out with a VAR and grew that business and ended up being one of the partners there for a number of years, sold that off to one of the biggest VARs in Canada and was on their technology leads as a partner for all of Canada. And then when I left that, I wanted to be still in the channel. And that's when I jumped on the ISV side and came over with Fraxion.
okay. So you've been on the partner side of the table as well. So that's good. I did not realize that. Yeah, and I always feel like when you mention how long you've been in the channel or in the industry, it feels like, man, I'm old.
As we date ourselves, no question. I'm
I
always like,
know.
oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness, right? I don't know. You don't look that you could be as old as I am. Oh, tell us a little bit about Fraxine. How did the company start and what's the company history?
Sure. A lot of people may not recognize Fraction from the Microsoft channel, but we've actually been around since about year 2000. We originally started as e-requester. So anybody who was the
Oh,
Microsoft GP or SL world would have remembered us as e-requester. We started in the Microsoft channel as an e-procurement solution way back then. And then in 2019, we merged with Fraction, which is actually out of South Africa, and gave us a global presence now and rebranded as Fraction. And the funny thing is that all happened so in 2019, and I joined the company about a year into that merger. And then as that got started, and I was about to start a whole channel program with all of our VARs, we had COVID, and we lost a couple of years there of being able to get out and
oh,
tell people our story and who we were. So
right.
if you'd been in the channel a long time, knew who e-requester were, you'd understand who we were and kind of where we're coming from. But anybody kind of who's new to the channel wouldn't know that. So it's nice to be able to get back into the channel now and start talking to people about what Fraction does and who we are. And we are a procure-to-pay software company that integrates into Business Central and other ERPs.
What does exactly procure to pay mean? I hear that a lot, but I wondered what that means. And
Yeah, no, we do get that question because a lot of people think e-procurement, but that's
yeah.
not your whole solution. That's just a portion of your procure to pay. So procure to pay is a grouping of functionality allows you to go from the request of an item or a good or a service, work it through the approval process so that it's ready to go, create the PO. You want to be able to track that receiving when it comes in, and then you want to track that invoice and be able to do the three-way match. Now,
Hmm.
that's one part of the process, but then you really want to be able to see that global view of your spend. And so you want to track things against some of these budgets that may include expenses or other areas of the business. And so we're able to do that across. So procure to pay is really going from that whole request right to the invoice process. So end to end.
Yeah, okay. Well, that helps explain it because sometimes, people have a different understanding what that means. And that's pretty comprehensive, absolutely. And you mentioned other ERP products you're compatible with. I know you mentioned Dynamics, but what else?
Well, yeah, so we actually cover all the kind of mainstream cloud-based solutions. So we've got Sage Intacct, we've got NetSuite, Acumatica, obviously Business Central, all those. But if you look at our legacy side, we still support GP, SL, Sage 100, 300, 500, and some of those other main solutions as well. Because we have our old e-requester product that still runs every loves because it's deeply integrated into those legacy programs, we still sell lots of those. And we have our cloud-based solution, which we then sell on top and use with all those cloud-based solutions. So we cover not just your newer ERPs, but all the ERPs, just depending on what your
Yeah.
requirements is. Need that
So do you
integration with.
think people generally want something that's in the cloud, even if they're on-prem with their ERP?
It's a funny thing, we you would think everybody wants to be in the cloud, but if
Yeah,
you've
right.
invested a ton of money into your ERP, so let's say you're on GP or SL or uh, Sage 500, which used to be the old Mass. I'm actually dealing with the Mass 500 one, which is now Sage 500. system right now, and they're highly committed to that internal infrastructure and what's going on and keeping that control. And so they have very little interest in a cloud-based solution. And so we still sell a lot of our older on-premise solution stuff. But obviously, you and I
Mhm.
are going. We've seen that transition because we were so used to everybody being in their on their servers, and now we see
Yep.
everything going to the cloud. So that
Hmm.
shift is happening more rapidly as digital transformations taking over every organization. So more and more
Yeah.
everybody wants to be in that cloud.
Yeah, and I know some clients that when I was a consultant, we were dealing with on-prem solution, and then they wanted to maybe migrate to the cloud, but they weren't quite ready. So it's kind of nice to have a hybrid, right? Like they could
Yes.
be in the cloud and kind of see what that's like, at least on and the procure to pay. That's probably a natural fit for cloud.
It really is. And we could even be in the cloud and still integrate to like GPSL. Like we can do all those
Oh
integrations
yeah,
from our cloud solution.
yeah,
But I mean, it is a fascinating thing to see how digital transformation is really accelerated, but yet you have this subgroup of companies who are really dedicated to what they've got today and the amount of
yeah.
time, because they've got tons of customization and history sitting there, and it's too hard
Right?
to meet.
Yeah, expensive, you know?
Yeah,
That's
very
maybe
expensive.
another reason is to kind of have time to plan that out. So is there any particular industries that you specialize in or work with?
I do, and I'm glad you asked, just because there are some areas where we are super efficient and effective, and there's a couple where not necessarily a great fit for us. And so it's always nice to have that conversation up front when we're dealing with it. So we do a lot in like the education, not for profit, agriculture, retail kind of spaces, anywhere where they've got lots of people out or lots of people making requests for non-stock or non-business related, inventory item stuff. Like if you're doing manufacturing and running MRP processes, we're not a great fit because we're not integrating for the most part at the inventory level, right? And so
Right.
most of our stuff is if you've got multiple locations and you've got people making requests, but you've got a centralized accounting department who's trying to keep track. And two, you want control of the spend that's going on outside or around the organization because there's lots of
Right.
spend. People who want
Yeah.
that control are really looking for our stuff because they want to approve. We call it being proactive versus reactive. You want to know what you're spending and you want to know what's out there before you spend it, not after the fact when else you're getting invoiced. You're saying,
Yeah,
well,
like,
what is
oops.
this? Who approved this and where did it go? Like what's happening? And so we
Right.
really try to be on that proactive end of things. And people who want control, that's the type of people that are looking at our solution and buying it.
Hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned not-for-profit or education, those make sense. What kind of multiple location businesses do you see using your solutions?
It's funny. So some of our clients, we have lots of clients who are in like the hotel industry, and they've
Uh,
got all these properties that they're managing, and they're trying to
right?
keep track of the spend in each one of them and making sure that they are like allocating the cost to those specific
Yeah.
properties. So when it's multiple locations, and actually in the manufacturing space, even though we don't do the manufacturing component, people add our solution because they're dealing with this factory over here and this warehouse over here and
Right.
maybe this storage unit over there, whatever it is. And so they've got all these dispersed people in these different geographies or these different locations that they're trying to make sure they have control of their spend and that they have complete
Yeah.
visibility of what's happening. When we talk on the not-for-profits, a lot of the not-for-profits actually have tons of locations that they may manage. So we've got like Easter Seals in Chicago and a few of these different places where they're actually managing these homes. And all these people are going out and making requests to purchase and manage for these things. And so we do a great job of that. And then when you take into not-for-profits having things like restricted funds because they've got donor funds and those type of things, uh,
Right.
those restricted funds, it's very
Uh,
important to know where that spend is going and be able to report on it. And so we capture, like I said, it's not just requests that end up in POs, but we actually capture expenses. So let's say you end up needing to buy breakfast at this location for whatever reason.
right.
That usually doesn't necessarily go in for a PO approval process, but it needs to be captured against that restricted fund. And so when we talk
Yeah.
procure to pay and spend management as a whole, you want to make sure
Right.
it all of that so you know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, restricted funds. There's also like grant money that they're
Yeah.
spending and programs they need to track to. And yeah, it's complex.
Well, and,
So,
and when we're doing with education, Now you're dealing with all these departments in different buildings, like some of these
Oh, right.
universities, charter schools, and you've got so much going on to not, you need as an accounting group and as just a control group, you need visibility into all that spend. So you're not buying more than you need to, and it's the right spend, and you're using the right vendors. So all
Yeah.
that stuff really comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we have government using this? I'd like to see them control spend.
It's funny. We do have some government entities that do
There you
use our
go. Okay.
stuff. Unfortunately, it's not the ones that we probably want using
No.
it to take control of our spend.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be a joy to be able to say, "Oh, government, show me what you're really doing."
Right. What have you spent of my tax
That's right.
dollars?
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Well,
Wouldn't that be fun?
okay. So just kind of changing gears a little bit here, I know you've been on the channel a few years and there's a lot of changes that have happened, especially after the pandemic. That I think everybody realized they needed to be more efficient and a lot of people working remote. So what changes have you seen in the channel and kind of what are some of the big trends there?
Oh, well, and you've been through this with me, which is funny. When I started, we had lots of small organizations who were as VARs, and it was not unusual to find 3, 5 person shops. Like if I remember when we
Yeah.
hit 3 people, and we were also considered a big VAR, at least in our geography where we were, and I kind of thought that was interesting. So now with Microsoft, the way that they've changed the way they deal with partners and the way that the partners work, I've seen a huge consolidation of partners where we've got lots of what I call mega VARs who
Yep.
have they've just gobbled up and swallowed up all these smaller VARs because they have that scale and they can do that and manage with Microsoft, manage with the ISVs. So we see a lot less of the smaller VARs in play, like you still see one or two, the individual consultants, but you don't see those smaller 5, 6, 7 person shops. But then it's also changed in the way because we deliver in the cloud now, and so you don't need the same infrastructure requirements
Yeah.
in your team. You don't need SQL DBAs the same way that we used to in the old days. Some of those things. But we are seeing some of those technology partners that used to really be on the classic side are now moving themselves
Oh,
into the ERP space and the CRM space, and they're pushing
yeah.
into the market. So you may be missing some of those smaller VARs, but you're seeing this whole new group of players
Oh,
coming in the technology side because it's much easier
great.
to, you still need your CPAs, you still need those individuals who are very skilled at the ERP, but you
Mhm.
get into the market if you're already in technology a lot easier than you used to be able to.
Right. And yeah, and a lot of partners that were ERP focused in the beginning now have kind of scaled to add infrastructure and managed services and Azure cloud
Yes.
hosting and other products and
Yeah, and
services.
you're
So they can really truly be that end-to-end technology partner, not just their, accounting system partner or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and it is. It's much like I said, you see that consolidation, but you see also that merger with the technology group now. And so that small guy now merged with a small technology guy, but now they're a medium-sized business. It's all about the technology
Yeah.
end to end, which is super smart. It makes sense if you
Yeah.
can put all that together because you have to have managed services around some of these things. You have it all falls into the same licensing and all the different pieces. So it totally
Yeah.
makes sense to me where they're going.
It does make sense. Although I find that, some of those technology partners don't really have the team members that are skilled in the business side, so
Well, yeah, I'm sure you get asked as often as I do. Hey, do you know anybody who can do Business Central? Well, I know lots of people
yeah,
can do it, but they're all working. There's no
yeah,
shortage of
yeah,
places for
everybody
them to
is
be.
exactly,
So,
yeah. Yeah, that is the challenge is just the talent and the partners that have them are keeping them busy.
they're
So,
keeping them busy and they're doing a good
yeah,
job. I think the training, because everything's online in a much easier fashion. Like, I mean, when you and I started, they actually hosted GP sessions in Fargo. What I think there were the GP boot camp. Does that sound
yeah,
familiar? Yeah, we used to
mhm,
have to, it cost us, I think for a week was $2,000, but we'd send them down.
Yeah,
to Fargo for a week. They'd go through the boot camp for a week or two and then come back and be ready to go. They don't
right.
have to do that anymore. You can get so much more online now and do so much more. I think the training's much
I've
easier.
heard some partners talking about maybe reviving that concept of doing some boot camps and trying to
I
get
don't
some of their either people reskilled, that maybe know ERP and accounting skills to have all those great consulting skills, but also bringing on like graduates that come out of college and they're ready to go and get them trained too, right? So
I think it would be
makes a
well worth.
lot of sense.
It does. And people,
Yeah.
I mean, we do a lot online, and you and I work online a lot. But any opportunity I get where I can get some training and be in a situation with lots of people around, I'm there because I feel like I learn a lot more through
Yeah.
the conversations and just even
Yeah.
sitting with drinks. You and I sat there at the last conference in Seattle there and just sat for an
Yeah.
hour and chatted. That's some of my most valuable information I get all
Yeah.
year, an hour versus sitting on a webinar where I get that little 5% or 3% extra. Those in-person events are they're a requirement as far as I'm concerned in lots of ways.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we're working with people. I mean, yes, it's technology, but it's working with people. Yeah, I definitely agree. What other operational challenges are you seeing with Dynamics partners or customers?
Ooh, operational challenges, other than people, which everybody struggles with. There's a lot going on in the market that really, adds stress to a lot of companies. So, I think you and I have talked about this in the past, but security issues like ransomware. Ransomware has become rampant, and I don't know how else to say it. We had a company that we had to restore. They'd lost most everything they had. We had to get them back up and running in a week or two. Seen that a couple of times where they did not the backups didn't work right or whatever, on their end wasn't going on their on-prem stuff. And we've got to go back and do it. So there's security, compliance. If you're looking at segregation of duties, like your compliance is super important to make sure that your internal controls are there. Because if you don't have them, as much as employees are generally, 99% great, there's always that 1% out there that are looking to defraud you in some way or some fashion. And if you
Yeah,
don't have the right things in place, you open
yeah.
yourself up. So I think some of those are really tough. And I think you hit on the other one. Labor shortage, finding people with the right talent is so hard these days. I don't know
At the
what you do.
right time, too, right?
Yeah, like if you were to say, hey, I need to do an implementation, if you don't have the right resources, you're not getting very far. So,
Yeah, and I do think that is a stress and a strain on the partners in the channel, right? Is finding the
oh,
right talent and the right resources to. And I even heard some partners deferring start dates, just because they don't have the capacity. It's like
yeah,
everybody else seems to be the same boat, right?
I think the same things that happened when I was doing our business is the same now. You're competing for the same resources because there's just not enough of them. And unfortunately, if you are in a leadership position or you're the one trying to get these projects out the door and you're hamstringed by resources, then
Yeah,
like customers only will wait for so long. It doesn't
great.
matter. You can be great at what you do, which is awesome, but it's your chance to do well when there's work available to you. And if you can't get the people,
Mhm.
right kind of people, I think that there's a lot of challenges around labor and getting people. I think your idea of bringing the boot camp back is so smart. Like, and we need that
Yeah,
younger generation getting involved in the
now.
ERP space because as you and I know, and we've been in the industry a long time, and we're not alone in that. There's lots of us have been in the industry a long
Yes,
time.
right. I talked to some partners in the Business Central space at that conference that we were just at, and yeah, it seems like they're kind of like, hey, maybe we can kind of work together and maybe do some training of staff and bring on some new people. So,
Well, you might
um,
have another new calling coming up for you
all right,
with the
boot
business
camp,
central
right?
training.
The
That's right.
dynamic connections. But so just like wondering, I know we heard a lot at that conference. It was a
Oh,
Microsoft event. A lot of Dynamics partners hearing about AI. Can you tell us how Fraxion is leveraging AI in your solutions or your application?
yeah, absolutely. And you're right. We were at that Seattle BizApps conference, which should have been aptly named the Copilot event. The AI conversation, and I have this across because I work in so many industries, I have this conversation across many industries. And I have people say to me all the time, "What are you guys going to do with AI?" And I said, "Well, where do you see value of AI in your business, and what are you willing to pay for it?" Ooh, I'm
Mm,
not sure I'm willing to pay for that yet. Like I have these interesting
yeah.
conversations. And so to me, I look at our AI strategy and really when I'm talking to my team, it's all about let's bring AI on where AI brings value to the customer.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of glitz and glam and people look at the next shiny object scenario with this, but if it's not providing value, why would we spend the time and energy to put it in
Sure.
there? So when we look at things like Copilot or ChatGPT, obviously from our side, we're bringing that in. We already use AI extraction on the Azure platform when we're doing our AP processing and bringing all that data in from the invoices, where that totally makes sense, right? AI really does a
Right.
great job of bringing that out, predictive coding, all those pieces. We're putting it into our support. So when you have a question, how would I create a rec? It should say, well, here it is. Let me show you. And here's a video of how to do that. Like it's going to auto generate and do all those pieces for us. The other one is looking at using AI, and we're already doing community analytics through our Power BI platform, but really using AI to say, okay, well, here's how the community is doing. Here's how you rate. What do you need to do different to be better? And so giving you
Ah,
suggestions. How do you
yeah.
how do you become better in your process? Is your approval process broken or not working efficiently? Are you using
Yeah.
too many vendors and you should be using less vendors? Those type of things. And so we're really spending time
Mhm.
on the AI side looking at that value proposition
Cool.
of giving people value versus just throwing AI in there to be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I love that benchmarking concept, right? Like, how are people in kind of similar size companies or organizations doing their processes? And, how could I be more efficient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you know what else is going on in your industry and you're able to say, well,
Yeah.
how are we doing against that? Now you've got something to
Yeah.
say to your team. Okay, well, here's an area we should be doing better. Why aren't we?
Yeah.
And you have something
Why
to
aren't
do.
we?
Yeah, like AI is great, but it shouldn't replace the decision making that goes around the data, right? And we're really big on putting data in the hands of the decision maker at the point of decision because we
Right.
want to give them the most available data, but they still have to make the right choice with the
Yeah.
data.
Yeah, and they need those insights, as a buyer or a employee or a manager. Yeah, they all have some needs, But I like the buying trends and the benchmarking. That's a really cool idea. I love that.
Yeah, like
Um,
and when you say buying trends, I mean, it would be nice to be able to say this, tell me what the average price of a Surface laptop is at the moment. Just so I know if
yeah.
I'm getting a good deal when I buy my next one. I
Yeah,
agree with you. Like the buying trends and be able to ask the questions. I think it could be a lot of fun very soon. I think AI's just got to mature a lot more. I mean,
yeah.
I think we did laugh about this at the conference. We just didn't realize that Copilot wasn't just Copilot, but you had
Right?
Copilot for Teams, you had Copilot for
Right.
Dynamics.
Specific co-pilots, for your
Yeah.
ERP, for your CRM, and then you've got Copilot Studio, so you can build kind of custom applications. So, and I kind of feel
And
like, Jesse, it's always like at the beginning of something new, we all kind of like go through this period of like, it feels fuzzy. Like when they talked about the cloud, I remember thinking, what the heck is that? When they talked about digital transformation, I was like, okay, that's like another buzzword. But, we're kind of past that now. People kind of have sort of transformed their businesses, and virtually gone more in the cloud. So yeah, I feel like it's this a time where people will take a little bit of time understanding and how it can be applied in their business and organization. And I think businesses like Fraxion too, right? Where you're using AI and you're kind of in the back end helping provide those insights or providing that workflow and streamline the process.
well, and I think as it matures, we're just going to see, obviously, it's like
Yeah.
all the tools like you're talking about. It just takes time and maturing to really get a good feel for it. And right now,
Yeah.
I think you and I were laughing. If they had Copilot adoption, like they had Teams adoption, it would just disintegrate. Copilot is not built to handle that kind of volume at this point. So Microsoft's being pretty cautious on how they roll that out, which is smart, right? And so
Yeah.
it is a
Good
fascinating
point.
thing.
That if they had the floodgates open, everybody had the demand, they might be a little overwhelmed.
Just just this
So
much, yeah, just this
a
much.
little bit, yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about a story of a customer that's been successful with Fraction's solutions and why.
Sure. If I was to look, and I'll look at a couple different industries that we've been working in. So one of them is, of all things, tree fruit. The tree fruit industry is done really well with its technology when it comes to the actual operations of their orchards for the apples. And we've got several apple producers that we've worked with, but their technology on the back end and their processes around the operations for things like requests and controlling spend have not been good. And so we've really found a
Right,
great niche and we spend a lot of time in there. We have been able to help them get a control over what's being spent. They're able to say, by this orchard, how much did we spend on this? What did we use? Like all these
right.
different pieces. And their
Yep,
accounting department no longer is getting all these invoices and saying, well, where is all this coming from? Did we actually use it? Did we even receive it? Like, what is this? Just providing that
yeah,
visibility across, like this goes back to the geography thing. When you've got all these people out and about and they're managing these operations all over, it's really hard. So we've been able to provide a lot of visibility and clarity into their business and control their spend, make sure they're spending with the right vendors so that they're getting the best prices and taking advantage of their negotiated prices. We have obviously a lot of our technology around punch out, punch in, which I think we're probably going to talk about here in a little while, have really added a lot of value to them. And then if we flip that over and we look at the education sector, which we've also been doing a lot in, schools are running tighter and tighter all the time. Like their budgets are
oh,
tight.
sure.
We really focus on like the private and charter schools who are actually can be quite big and with lots of departments, different buildings, separate locations. Again, not they didn't have the visibility. They couldn't tell what was going on. They didn't know what their people were spending money on. They didn't. The people who were spending money didn't know what their budgets were, so they were just spending because they thought, okay, I got this amount of budget, even though it's wrong. They're getting information that's 60 days old, so they don't even know where they're at in their budget. Like
Right.
Hotshot
Yeah.
School was one of ours that we did or been working with the last couple of years. Just did a case study on them, and just the amount of visibility and their control of their spend has saved them so much time and money and resources that it's been incredible.
Right.
And then we get to
Yeah.
work with fun groups. So one of mine that I actually really like a lot is the Montana School for the Deaf and the Blind. And they're not
Oh,
for profit, but they've got lots going on because their student base has lots of special needs. And so they're,
sure.
making purchases and doing all, doing all these things. And so again, visibility, control, really making sure that they make it easy for their people to buy things if they're interacting with Amazon or, a lot of
Right.
these, yeah, work with Granger, a lot of them, and, all these different vendors that they work with and really streamlining that whole process and giving them control. It's really been a lot. So I actually really have a soft spot and really enjoy working for the not-for-profits just because you get to see the great work they're doing. And when we help
Right.
their business be successful, I feel so good about it
Yeah.
personally. And we as a business feel
Right.
so good about it. There's a lot of rewarding pieces there for us.
Mhm. Yeah, you're supporting their mission, right? Which is to help whatever their community is they're working with. So, yeah, I totally get that. Well, so what are some of the new things? I know you mentioned like punch out, punch in, but what are some of the new things that Praxian's doing to help customers move along in their journey to the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, so from a change in our product, so if you look at us from the e-requester days where we're just focused on the
Yeah,
request, we're so much more than that now with the full spend management because even though we still consider ourselves a procurement company, we do the AP automation as well. So we capture and use AI data extraction in Azure to capture the invoice, do the matching. So we added that to product. I don't think most people even realize that we do API, the AP component of it. Like there's lots of companies who
yeah,
just do AP or just do your requests, but we put that all the way across together. And so that's one
mhm,
piece. But if you look, and our CEO Stanton and I actually just did a session the other day on this. It's about working with tools or working in the tools that people are used to and familiar working with instead of trying to jump around like, well, I need a request. Well, I have to do it here in Fraction. We don't have to anymore. We actually are just
yeah,
reducing, and we'll be the first company in our space with a Teams integration where you can actually create your request and approve it all in Microsoft Teams. And so that should
great,
be here in the next month. Your approver having to go into the system and approve it, I mean, we have the phone app, obviously, where they can prove it off their phone. But if they're sitting at their desk
Yeah.
working in Teams and all of a sudden it comes up and says, hey, here's the request, I'll
Yeah.
show you
Take
what the
care of
request
it.
is, the budgets it against, and so I'm giving
Yeah.
you all the data to make the right decision. You just have to approve it or cancel it or send it back, whatever you want to do, all within Teams, which is where you familiar work today. The other part of that is, we talked about the Amazon experience. So we have a product called Punch Out, which allows us to streamline the purchasing with any vendor who's made their website Punch Out enabled. And we have well over 50 vendors we already do with this today, like obviously Amazon, Staples, Best Buy, Grainger, a lot of the medical care places, packaging, lots of those. And more and more of the smaller vendors are actually enabling their websites. And what that allows us to do, so let's say I'm someone who needs something, I literally just say, I want to create a request for stuff. And I say, well, where do you want to do this? Do you want to do this at one of your punch out vendors? And I say, yeah, I want to go to Amazon. Amazon, it logs me into Amazon. I do my shopping like I normally would on Amazon. I mean, how much do you shop on Amazon, Carol? Probably as much as I do. A lot.
Yeah, probably.
We know that
I say
experience extremely well.
a lot across our whole family. Yeah.
That's right. You,
Every
you
day
get,
there's a package out there for us waiting.
yeah, and businesses aren't any different. People are out there shopping like crazy. And now all I say when I get to the end instead of checkout is submit for approval. And when I push submit for approval, we automatically send all that data with all the right pricing back in. Your approver gets the message, yeah, I approve that. Click. We automatically send back the PO. They send us the invoice. When the receiving gets there, we say, yeah, we got it. Click, and we're done. And so,
That's so cool.
yeah,
I
automates that
love
whole process. But that's just the punch outside, which we do with everybody. So the forward thinking part, Carol, which is people probably haven't heard of yet and it's proprietary to Amazon at this point, is the punch in, where instead of me having to log into
Oh,
my system and say I want to go shop at Amazon, I literally just log into Amazon. It recognizes who I am and what purchasing system I'm using. I go through and buy, and when I push submit, it just comes in. I, as a user, have never entered the system. It
wow.
just does it for me. The requester gets their piece and away they go. So Punch-In is proprietary, and we're one of about 4 companies in the US that helped launch that with Amazon. But we're going to see that, I think, propagate out quite quickly now to other groups as it
Yeah.
matures in the process. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I had not heard of Punch In before. It's kind of new, and you guys are on the kind of one of the few that are actually doing that. It's pretty cool, forward thinking.
It's fun to be on
So,
the cutting edge. Like, a lot of times when you're on the ERP side, you're kind of lagging behind. Like we're always like,
mhm.
we'll get you to, the latest version about 6 months after it's released or a year after it's released, because then we know
Yeah,
it's okay. Whereas on
yeah,
this side, we're at the forefront of it and really spearheading that and having a lot of fun with it.
yeah. And I think, the new workers in the future too, that I feel like that's what they expect, right? Everything be mobile on my phone, kind of one click. Why not have their business applications also have that sort of same consumer like feel, look and feel too? It makes sense.
It will. And we're doing a new UI release, even though our UI is quite up to date. We're doing a newer one, and it's going to look and feel, I would have to say, probably a lot more like the Microsoft look and feel of Business Central,
Okay.
which allows us to even get more real estate and do a few really cool
Yeah,
technology things that we're pretty excited about.
neat. I'll be excited to hear more about that. So, I have to always ask because you're in the procurement and AP automation space, but it's a really crowded space. So, why would someone choose working with your solution?
It's a great question. And I agree. The AP automation space is loaded. And it's really a commodity now. Everybody's
Crowded.
got it, right? Like it's just crammed. The side that's not covered well is the procurement side, where it's actually integrated into your AP automation and integrated into your ERP system. There's very few companies out there doing that, or even offering a lot of the same things we are. For example, we're going to be the only one
Like,
in the market with that Microsoft Teams integration and moving that forward. Obviously, our mobile application is all built on the native iOS and Android, and it's progressed a long way. So now you're just taking pictures and capturing your documents on your phone and doing approvals, all those pieces. But to put them all together as a single solution, not just your requisitions, but your expense and your AP automation and all the different pieces, receiving. Not many people are doing what we're doing in terms of a full solution in the cloud. Very, very modern technology. There's still lots of AP automation companies who are literally capturing your document and sending it offshore, getting it checked, and then bring it back to you. So I have access for 24 hours or whatever it is. It's amazing how many people are still stuck on that older technology. We used to think, well, we're late to the game with AP automation, but being late to the game has allowed us to use the newer technology and not get stuck and married to the old stuff. So it's actually been a lot of fun.
Right.
And we're very dominant in the procurement side of things. And I always say to my staff, we are a procurement first company. That's where we grew up. That's our strength. All this other
Right.
stuff, these are commodity items, but
Yeah.
we have them as well. And what separates
Yeah.
us is not just that.
Right. So you're not a one trick pony, as they say.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yes. We're very comprehensive. We're deeply integrated into the
Yeah.
ERPs that our partners are working with. And we really take partnering quite serious. We want to hear from our partners. We work with them. We talk to them about things they want to see in the product. And then as we're doing our road mapping, a lot of that input from our partners is being put into the product and where we're going. So, we take that very serious and those relationships very serious as well.
Yeah, well, kind of talking about that, what things are you seeing developed in the future? You talked about a few things, but it sounds like you're getting feedback from customers and partners, but what trends are you guys hoping to incorporate into your product?
Well, I think you're going to see us continue to work very heavily. Like we're built really heavily on the Microsoft stack in terms of,
Right.
Azure, we're using Azure Capture for our AI extraction, the AP side of things. Obviously, Power BI. Like we're utilizing all those tools, and so now, obviously, introducing AI into that will be a big trend. But also, really building our solution so it works where our customers work. So things like the Teams integration, really enhancing that and building it out. Anywhere Amazon, that type of instance. So really going out and getting that feel for where do our customers work and how do we enhance that
Yeah.
experience without having them to, come back in and I have to only do it this one way. I want to be able to do it the way they want to work and where they want to work. And so when we look at the forward thinking stuff, that's where our brains at. Like Stan, our CEO, and I have these conversations regularly about one, we're not going to chase the shiny objects. It's got to be value orientated decision making, and then what do our clients really value, and where do we? So we spend our money there in those areas. So I could see AI obviously being part of that, and
Yeah.
teams, all those pieces. But those are the areas we're really focusing on.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that we talked about conferences, but there's a conference coming up here the latter half of 2024. And we're sitting here right now in the summertime before that conference. That would be Dynamics Community Summit, North America. So are you going to be there and tell us how you're going to be involved and how to find you?
We're going to be there. I'll be there probably with Jen and potentially Stan. So there'll be a few of us there, and we're going to be out and about. I didn't want to get locked into a booth where I just stood in one place. I generally like to be out where I can meet people and chat with them. So I've got my channel manager, Jen, reaching out to some of our strategic partners and we're setting up meetings there, but I'll be there. I like to hear where Microsoft's going. I like to hear what the partners are thinking, actually, more than anything, how they view working with Microsoft and the changes in that process, what they're seeing in the market. So I'll be there. I'll be talking to partners all over the place, looking at those things. So we will be there and happy to chat with anybody about any of this. You and I have been in this for so long. We can have a conversation on any of it, and I think it's all valuable. So if anybody's got questions that they want to ask about any of the stuff we've talked about today, or
Yeah.
not just product, but just what's going on in the market and trends, I love having those conversations. I like to get other people's opinion on what's going on, where they're seeing changes, where they're struggling as a VAR. I mean, I was a VAR for 18 years, ran our shop, and insights there that I think I could provide value to people that aren't just
Yeah.
on the ISV side. And I like to know. I want to hear where people are struggling. I think it's fascinating to
Yeah.
understand where the struggle is and how to help people do better at business.
Yeah, definitely. So they can reach out to you and you'll be there so you can make a appointment with you or
Yeah, or they
or
can reach out
I
on LinkedIn.
find you're just hanging out all the time, so I think you're pretty easy to find.
Well, I do go to them with the intent of going to them. So I'm there. I'm at most of the sessions. I try and
You
find
don't hide
sessions.
out in your hotel room. I know that.
No,
You're
no.
usually in the lobby and the kind of networking areas, so you're usually around.
Yeah,
So,
and
okay.
happy to talk to people. I find it quite fun. I love the channel. I guess that's the way to put it. I have been in the channel. I've always been in
Ew.
the channel. I love the
Yeah.
channel. Anytime I can get together and we can talk and have,
Yeah.
chat about how to make the channel better, how to help as far as how to succeed better. I love those type of
Good.
conversations because it's just growing my world and your world.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it feels like, still the dynamics community is growing, but there's still a good feeling of community. People are willing to help each other. And sometimes it's a great place to go to answer questions or find new solutions or new ideas or talk to other users. Like, how are you doing this? One of my favorite things is go to the breakfasts and sit with customers and say, well, what are you here to learn? And then I'll run into them later and like, did you find out something about that?
You'll go to the breakfast, you'll be talking to these people, and they'll say, "Well, we're trying to solve this problem, but we don't know how." And you're like,
Yeah,
"Just go talk to that person over there. They'll
another
help you
person.
solve that
Yeah, I
problem."
know, right?
Yeah, because we've been around so long, we know all the people, we know who's
Hmm.
got the solutions, we know, like who's good and that you want to work with. So I think it's awesome.
That's really fun. Well, just in conclusion, Jesse, is there kind of one trend that you're seeing that partners or customers might come talk to you?
Yeah, I think the big trend in we saw, a different way to work with your group when COVID hit, and all of a sudden everybody was doing everything remotely, or there was way less in-person communication. That trend hasn't gone away necessarily. Lots of people come back to offices, but there's still lots of the organization that's out and about. But these groups and these companies want control of their spend. They want visibility into what's going on, and they want to have a great workflow approval process in place so that whether it's by department, project, dollar amount, whatever it is, that the right people are making the right decisions, that they're compliant with what the organization wants to see, and that they have a full
Yeah,
record of who made the request, who approved it, when did it get ordered, did the vendor actually receive the invoice? Because we actually do that part, and we can say, yeah, we sent that PO and it was opened by this person on this date. And then running from the finance team, invoices received or good received, not invoiced, or uh,
yeah,
invoiced but not received, and be able to provide that insight. And then I think we're
mm,
going to see a lot more around community analytics, right? How am I doing against the community? I think
right.
that's more and more important as people are starting to realize if I would just spend better and more with this vendor, I would get such a better price and save so much more
Yeah,
money. I just need
right.
to be more proactive in doing that. But I need somebody to tell me that
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah, and especially since people are not working remote, right? And don't have the opportunity to ask their colleagues. That's a really good point. And I feel like that, concept of received, not invoiced, I know I worked with clients when I was a consultant and I'd be like, sometimes those are scary numbers and they're big because they don't keep their processes clean and things moving through as they should. And so,
well, and that report and then the invoice not received one is always terrifying. So now I've
yeah.
got
Oh, yeah.
invoices sitting there, and I have no idea have I ever received any of this stuff.
Did
And
we get
if
it?
your process isn't good and that list is growing, from an accounting perspective, you're
Right.
panicked. Because now what are you doing? Can you pay it? Should you pay it? Do you who knows
Right.
where? Yeah, it's yeah. All those are very critical to.
So kind of getting those processes a little tighter, a little cleaner, so I don't have any kind of like big lists to clean up. But that is huge. Oh
Yeah, you don't want that accrual report to get too big. Everybody
my
panic.
gosh. Those auditors, they love those reports because they're like, these are unrecorded liabilities. You need to record something.
Well, it's funny, the auditors are always the most terrifying part. It's funny. So I was dealing with a company just the other day, and they're like, "So if we buy this, can I get my auditors into it? Like, can I just give them a license and let them go crazy so I don't have to deal with it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you communicate with them
Why
that way?"
would
Like,
you? Yeah. I think accountants and CPA firms are more in tune with that. And so they're
yes,
or can be more self-sufficient if you give them the appropriate access. So
yeah,
yeah, no, definitely saves time. Especially since things are so electronic, and digital, right? So they've got to have access to do their job too. Well, thank you, Jesse, for joining us today on this episode of ISV Talks. I really had a good conversation. It was fun. And here is Jesse's information if you want to reach out to Jesse. So thank you again, Jesse.
thank you. It's great to see it. If you want to reach out to me, you feel free. My email is jesseb@fraxion.biz, which is JESSEB at Fraxion.biz. Or my direct phone number is 206-812-2107. Or if you just want to reach out on LinkedIn and hit me up there, I'm always available and quite active on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And their website is fantastic. I was looking through it. I really was impressed. A lot of good information there. So check that out at fraxion.biz. All right. Well, thank you again, Jesse. And we'll see you, friends, on the next episode for ISV Talks. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.